You're listening to the Mental Money Podcast, the show that shows you how to master your mind to maximize your money. This show is for people who love to watch their bank accounts grow while shifting their relationship to money. Without further ado, let's get these insider insights from today's leading expert. So to everyone that's joining me right now, we're going to do a live episode for the Q&A for the grant funding because a lot of people had questions about the grant funding. I'm very appreciative for the questions and the feedback, and I'm happy to serve in this way. So let's get started. We're going to talk about grants today. And a lot of business owners want to know about grants. They want to know, should they pay for a grants list? Some of the questions that came up were, why didn't I talk about government grants? We're going to go into that a little bit. We're going to do a walkthrough of Hello Alice. And then I'm going to give you a couple of other sites like Hello Alice. We're going to talk a little bit about proposals, as well as some points that I think that you should know going into this. The growth grant that Mental Money is launching is going to be launching on Thursday. So look out for that. Follow on social media because that's where it's going to be announced, unless you're on the newsletter. The newsletter is going to get it first, the application first, and then the social media is going to get it later. So if you're following the newsletter, then you'll be fine. But if you're not, then sorry, maybe you should follow and you'll get these updates earlier. That's the benefit to being on the newsletter. So let's jump right in. Let me open up Hello Alice. All right. Okay. And then we'll look at some of the opportunities that they have available. All right. So the first question that we got was, should I pay for a grants list? And that was a question that came up a lot. And the answer, unfortunately, is kind of split down the middle with a yes or a no. I think, yes, it would be worth it if you do not have the time to go and sort grants by yourself. But if you do, please go ahead and feel free to do it. I mean, or if you don't, rather, then feel free to go do it. What else? I would say yes, if you should pay for it if you have the money, because remember, we're trying to keep this business as lean as possible. And lean means that we're not taking on unnecessary costs if we don't have to. Grants are widely available. The only real benefit to a list is that you get access to all of them at one time. They're in one place, nicely consolidated for you. Depending on who's selling the list, it might be a situation where they've already catered to a niche specific group where it's going to benefit them. But if it's just a broad list, that might not benefit you. For example, if you're a minority woman. So you might want a list that has several grants tailored to minority women, depending on the cost. That might be good for you. I would say no if you don't have the money and you really are trying to save and be lean, because it is something that's free information and easily accessible. So you should be able to do that with no problem. Hold on one second. Actually, just forgot to put my phone on Do Not Disturb because people like to disturb. Okay. That's it. All right. So the next thing, so I hope that answers that question. I mean, there are a lot of variables that go into it, but just consider where you are in your business, what your goals are, what your objectives are, how much you have to spend, because some of these lists get really expensive. So think about how much you have to spend and then kind of go from there. All right. Why didn't you talk about government grants? So one of the reasons why I didn't even bother mentioning government grants is because they're very specific. And the one example that I could think of is, as far as like government grants are concerned, is a company. Well, I used to work for back in the day. And when I was at there was a program called Ryan White. So Ryan White was federally funded, and the federal funding came from the federal funding was for HIV and AIDS care. And the people who were receiving the care were either uninsured or underinsured, but needed treatment. So those funds went towards making sure that the actual university, right, had funds to take care of these individuals. And then they had really strict requirements around who can actually qualify for the Ryan White program. So essentially they paid us, the worker, to qualify these people, make sure that they were taking their medication, make sure that whoever walked into the door was understanding what the program was, give education, support, resources, and that's what the funds were for. Very specific reason those funds were used. And a lot of government grants are kind of structured that way. So the reason why we didn't really talk about government grants is because a lot of businesses that unfortunately interact with are not even really positioned to get into that kind of space. But if you are thinking about it, and if you are positioned to do that, as far as like making sure all of your paperwork, and because it's a lot of paperwork, bureaucracy, right? We're working with the government. If you have all of your paperwork in place, a couple things that you want to consider, and this is not a training on government grants, which we'll get into at another, we'll do a month series on government funding and grants and like government contracting, because that's a question a lot of people have. But this is just a quick overview of a couple of things that you will need. And we'll even go through some of the grants on grants.gov so we can look and see exactly how, for example, Ryan White is structured, and you'll see that play out in different grants on grant.gov. So one of the things that you'll definitely need to have your entity, which is your business, registered with SAM, which is the System for Award Management. That's where the government does business. That's where you're probably going to even find the grant opportunities to begin with. Grants.gov is also federal. It's a federal site, but they're going to look for your SAM registration. They're going to ask you information about that information. They're going to ask you that information about your business when you go to try to apply for those grants. So what else? You could also benefit from having a certification. So when you're active in the SAM system, they offer different grant opportunities, or they offer different even contracting opportunities that you would bid for or not bid for, or what they call set-asides for businesses that are certified as a minority-owned or woman-owned or veteran-owned and operated, whatever the case may be. They set aside these contracts and funding for these specific businesses. So just think about, also, in addition to getting your entity registration in SAM, you might want to think about becoming certified, because that certification will allow you then to kind of niche down even further into grant opportunities that would be available to you. You'll need to understand grant writing and some of the terminology that's on the websites, as far as like, for example, grants.gov. They're going to be asking you a lot of questions. They're going to be asking you for eligibility requirements. There's a lot, it's very involved, like I mentioned. So you want to know how to do these things. If you don't have a very proficient grant writer, or you are a proficient grant writer, then this might not be for you, because it could get costly and it is very involved and very time consuming. So if you are a solopreneur right now and you are the one that's running your day-to-day business, in addition to trying to write grants, it's going to be very costly and time consuming. So I don't know if that's really an option for where we are now. I think maybe even trying to get awarded a grant that is not from the government first. And that we talked about that in episode 26, right? We talked about shying away from that right now, because it's, unless you have the support and infrastructure to do it, I wouldn't even touch it personally. But, that's a whole different conversation for another day. But that's that. So let's look at some of these grant.gov grants that are there, and we'll see what I mean and why I don't recommend brand new businesses do it. Give me 1 second. So for those of us who are watching on the live versus listening to this, we're going to grants.gov, and right now we're looking at we're going to search some grants. So the good thing about this site is that it's pretty intuitive. There's a keyword section, an opportunity number if you happen to know it, and then another search criteria called the CFTA. I'm not 100% sure what that stands for. And then there are different opportunity statuses. You can look at your eligibility based on if you're a small business, if it's state a grant or an opportunity that's being funded by a government organization. There's grants set aside for public and state-controlled institutions of higher education. And then some of them say unrestricted or special district governments. Like, there's different qualifications. So, all right, so I'm going to put in speaker because I'm a speaker. So we're going to look first, see if there's speaking opportunities. And quite a few came up. So there's about 25 on a page. There's about 6 or plus pages, and there's 135 matching results that came up. Now, some of these are going into 2023. Some of these are about to close soon, but let's look at one of the ones that are coming up, right? It says the opportunity title, is Academy for Women Entrepreneurs 2023. So this grant is for $30,000. The minimum they'll give you is $10,000. So with these grants, you actually have to know how much you need for the project that you're being funded, and you have to submit that information. It's pretty much a real proposal. The proposal is, this is how much I can do this project for. That's the cap they're willing to pay on it, $30,000, right? And you'll see that under estimated total program funding. Now, the least amount is $10,000, because I'm assuming in most cases, they've already done the math, they've already done the work, and they know how much these things are going to cost, right? So they'll look at they'll even look at the most they're willing to pay for it and versus the least they're willing to pay for it. And in this case, that's $10,000 and $30,000. Let's see what else. So the opportunity title, but then also the agency name, right? You also want to look for what organization is actually funding this project, because this is essentially who you'll be reporting to for the most part. And they'll have everything, the program objectives, what the outcome of this grant is going to be. Like, you can't just get the money and then like grow your business with it. That's not necessarily how it works. For this grant, for example, one of the objectives is equip participants with skills and knowledge on building a sustainable business. This is a grant I would apply for, because I can qualify for that, right? That's something I can meet, and I would write that into my proposal. Build a network of female entrepreneurs that is committed to supporting and promoting relationships that grow businesses and drive local partnerships. Also something that you could do. But like, let's say, for example, increase participant understanding of business planning and scaling up operations. If I could not do that, I automatically would be eliminated, because I would have to write in my proposal, and I wouldn't have that area in my proposal because I don't know what business, for example, I wouldn't know what business planning looks like. So just that. And then proposals, it requires a proposal because it says proposal submitted. Applicants should submit a proposal with sufficient travel budget funds if beneficiaries are traveling to a workshop and data plan. So it's a very involved process. You have to give a budget for this, and you have to be able to articulate that you are able to meet the objectives of that agency. It tells you a little bit more about the award information. The funding type. Cooperative agreement just means that it's essentially understanding that this is an agreement between you and the government. Eligibility, so who can qualify for this? There's a request for a proposal, and they'll even tell you exactly where you're emailing this information to, the application. And what's good about these, for the most part, is you're not walking into it blind. There is a link right here to additional information. And if you click that link, then you'll see like templates of their budget worksheet, how they want that structured. The application is there, and they'll even tell you the name of the person who you want to reach out to in the email. So if you ever had any questions, you could reach out to them and ask them the questions that you had. They'll tell you what the restrictions on the funding is. So let's say you get funded or awarded the $30,000, the maximum. They'll tell you that no more than 10% of that can be used for equipment purchase. So there are really strict requirements for what it can be. So you're not going to get this $30,000 and just ball out. That's really not how that's going to happen. So I only mentioned grants.gov in passing and really didn't go too deep into grants.gov, because I know newer businesses, unless you have a really niche business, like you're in education, or you're in technology, or you have like a wellness center of some sort. Like, and when I say wellness center, I mean like behavioral health, something very technical like mental health. There are grant opportunities for that, but you're even going to have to deal with a specific set of people. So just a word on that. But if there's any more questions on that, please feel free to forward that over. Again, like I mentioned, we are going to be doing an entire month on grant writing, grant funding, working with the government, because it's a very involved process. And I'm going to be offering additional support on that, because we've done a lot of contracting with the government, and it's a lot. So just know that you will be supported in that way. It's coming up towards the end of next year, unfortunately, because we have so many other requests coming up. So we want to fulfill those first, but it's coming. Keep like engaging, and you'll understand how to even position yourself for your business. So by the time we get to that grant funding, you'll be well positioned for that. So that's that on that. So we're going to go ahead and click out of that. Let's go to Hello Alice. Let's transition to Hello Alice real quick. And we're, for those that are listening, we're on helloalice.com, and we're looking at funding, and then we looked at grants, right? Right now they have a couple of grants listed, and some of them are for, I see one here for disaster relief for restaurants, small business growth fund, keep it local business growth fund. There's quite a few on here. Let's look. There's, well, actually like about 5. So they're ranging anywhere from like, I see one for 25,000, 5,000, 10,000. And they're all partnered with some organization that's funding it. I would say, like, strategically, I would also reach out to these organizations directly to see what opportunities they have and kind of keep in touch with them, because you don't have to use a third party like Hello Alice. You can go straight to the source. Just keep a running list of organizations that you see post grant opportunities and just reach out to them. Find out who the key person is and reach out to them directly. So what do we want to look at? Let's look at Keep It Local Business Fund, right? So episode 26, we talked about how different grants, I'm not signing in. Okay, it's asking to sign in. So we're not going to go do that. So different grants have different requirements. These are saying that they want you to, it's provided for people of color. From what I could see, Devote is making a difference in there because it's a local grant. I'm sure it's like community-based. So it might be restricted to businesses. Like, for example, I'm incorporated in Delaware, but I live in a different state. So I don't know if I would qualify for something like this, because what's local for me, right? So you would have to think about different things like that. So this one is a $25,000 small business growth grant for high growth small business owners ready to make their next big move. So I'm assuming that this is for this is an assumption because I don't see the requirement, but for a grant like this, I would assume it's a little bit more involved, and you would have to know what your next big move is. You should be able to articulate that to some degree. And then also high growth, I'm assuming that you've already been in business and you've already have some proof of concept. You already have proof that your idea or your business is profitable and sustainable. So they're just helping you fund your business to be able to take it to the next step. Right? So other sites like Hello Alice that you can use to find grants. I Fund Women is a really good one for women. They fund women-owned businesses. NAV, you should already be on NAV if you have a small business, because that's where you should be building your business credit. Again, we'll have an entire series on business credit, but you should already have an account with NAV. It'll help you keep track of your personal credit, your business credit. They have funding opportunities on there based on that information. They have funding opportunities based on those opportunities. They have funding opportunities based on that information. So you should definitely be keeping up with NAV for sure. And you should have an account on there. Don't skip that part. I just feel like I repeated myself 12 times, but it's fine. AfricanAmericanGrants.org, that's another great organization that has grant opportunities. They'll list them fairly often. It's pretty up to date. This is where I go to find some. They even have, I like that they have like articles and stuff for opportunities for men, because men ask about it a lot. Even though I don't cater to men, they still ask me. So that's one thing that you'll definitely see is grant opportunities listed. And then of course, our newsletter is another place that you can get grant opportunities. We also update that, and like as soon as we get opportunities, someone's on it and they're updating it. So you'll find that in the links or in the description of the episodes. So you can look out for that. Okay. Questions about proposals, right? So we got a couple questions about proposals. So I just kind of did like a catch-all regarding what should be in a proposal? Because I think if I answer that question, it will answer the different questions. So I mentioned proposals in passing in episode 26 as something that you would consider if you are going to sign to complete a grant application, because some grants require that you have a proposal. Now, what a proposal is, what you plan, essentially what you plan on doing with the funds, what you propose to do with them, right? So one thing you're going to have to know is not know, but one thing you will have to address is a summary and a background of your company. These people are not just cash cows, right? We don't want to treat them like cash cows. They are people who are passionate about what they're doing, who they're funding, who they're awarding this money to. So they want to know that you're passionate about your business too. So you should have a good summary and background of who you are and why you're in the business that you're in, right? So find a way to make sure that you're articulating that. If you need any help with that, then you should definitely reach out to someone who's a really great storyteller or writer, because when someone is moved by your approach to your business, they want to support in some way, right? And that's not 100% guaranteed, but they're more likely to want to support when they understand who you are and what you have to offer and why you're doing this, why you're so passionate about this, and how you're actually going to be helping other people, right? So that brings me to my next point. The next point being, you need to know what need is being addressed, right? They're not funding people that just need to grow. You need to articulate what need you're serving and how growing is going to help you address that need. For example, let's say your business has to deal with mental health and you're creating a program your program proposal has to do with creating a medication that will improve the symptoms of depression, right? Example, what is the need? How do you articulate this is the subset of people that are impacted by not having this medication? This is the data and statistic around the people who are impacted by this. Like, give numbers, give statistics, give support. Like this, if the issue doesn't get served by you, this is how it's going to impact this community, right? This is the negative impact. This is how it's going to harm this community if this is not addressed. And it has to be real information. You're not making up numbers. You're just real data to support what you're saying, right? So what need are you addressing? Who are you serving? Why are you serving them? What happens if you don't serve them? Those are some things to think about. So think about also what is being funded. What project are you actually funding? What are they actually funding? What's your business model? Who are you serving? How long will it take to get this off the ground? If the amount you're asking for isn't enough to cover the project, how do you plan on getting additional sources of funding? And are you planning to match whatever it is that you're being given, right? So what part of the project are they actually funding? So we're going to go back to the medicine example, because I think pharmaceuticals is a catch-all in a way. So let's say that the funds are going to research and development, right? But research and development is going to take the entire award amount that you're asking for. So if you need to go to marketing or clinical trials, then who's going to fund that? How are you going to fund that? You want to really think about how you're going to answer that question, because they're going to want to know. Otherwise, that brings us to the next point. You're going to be put at risk. This project is at risk, right? So risk mitigation is also something that you need to mention. How are you going to address the barriers that come up and the risk of what you're going to be doing? Because they want to know that you understand, one, what you're doing, but they also want to understand that you considered all the possible opportunities for this not to work, because nothing's guaranteed. I mean, it could be the greatest idea in the entire world, but it might not be guaranteed. So have you mitigated as much risk as possible? And this all ties into each other, right? So your business model, if you don't have a sustainable business model, that's a risk. If you don't know who you're serving, that's a risk. If you don't have controls in place to test and, employees to support this project, That's a risk. All of those things are risk. So how are you going to control that risk as much as possible? They're not asking you to be perfect, because these are business owners. They understand how businesses run. They understand that there are risk involved. But if you can find a way to articulate how you plan on doing it, at the very least, that's a lot more helpful than just saying, we don't know, we'll figure it out. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to work. So that's one thing. You also should mention the team members and their qualifications that are working on the actual project. And this is important because, for example, especially as a solopreneur, even if you're mentioning contractors or even the people that you propose will work on it, you need to know, they want to know that you know who the key members of this project is going to be, because if it's all you, it's going to be very difficult to do whatever it is that you're going to do. They automatically assume that, especially depending on what it is. So it's let's say, again, back to the example of the pharmaceutical company or the drug development, they'll need to know what your role is going to be on it as the founder, CEO, CFO, CMO, whatever you're going to be. They need to know your role in the actual project, and then who else is supporting this. A chemist, someone that does marketing, someone who's going to do your website, someone who's doing the research. Like, they need to know the team and their qualifications to make sure, or who you plan on hiring, so that they know that you understand what the real scope of work is, what's going to be required of you to fulfill this project. Also, think about budgeting. Like, this one is probably the most important part, and this is where a lot of the time we come in, because I can't tell you who you serve. You really need to know that, right? I can't tell you what your business model is. I can have a good idea about it. I can probably even suggest things that might work better because of your industry, or because of who you plan on serving and other data that you source. But your budgets and projections need to be solid. And the reason why I say this one has to maybe be perfect or close to perfect, because the numbers don't lie, right? So keep your projections very conservative. Budget, you should know what goes into this, like financially. There should really be as little surprises as possible. Try to be as lean as possible, meaning like you're not giving inflated numbers like, we project that we're going to make $1 million in 2 months. That's not impossible. I'm not saying what's possible for you, but I'm saying they're going to look at that with a little bit of a question mark, like, how are you going to make that possible? So with that said, list all of the elements of what will be in your budget. Insurances, and nothing goes off of there. Insurance, permits, licenses, office rent, whatever the case may be, whatever cost is associated with making sure that this project works should be listed in your budget. And for how long you're going to, those funds will be used, or you're going to need those funds in order to keep this project afloat. Again, we mentioned how long it's going to take to get off the ground. So you also want to mention in your budgets and your projections how long you're going to use those funds for, how long those funds can hold you over, essentially. Also, your budget should tell a story. It should be really clear, especially in the projections part, that for every dollar that comes in, you should be able to tell the budget, and the projection should weave a story about how you're going to make $4 from every dollar that goes out. $4 should be coming in for every $1 that goes out. And that should be easy to articulate by any financial professional. So last thing that should be included in a proposal is high-level goals, right? So your project, yes, is one piece that is going to be funded to be able to bring your business to where you need to be. But once you get past that, what else are you working on? What else do you hope to do? What else do you see for your company? Like almost like a mission and vision, right? Like high-level goal could be 20,000 people served in 4 years, right? What are you working towards? What are you fighting for with this grant, with this opportunity, with this project? What is it? And that should be articulated as well. Okay, so now on to a couple points that I think you should really, 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 really pay attention to. Maybe even take notes, revisit the episode if you need to, and come back to this very point. But one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that grant funds can be taxed, right? Yes, Uncle Sam is going to get his regardless, all right? So this is why I mentioned to be sure of the amount that you're going to take out. You really want to think about how much you are being awarded, and don't take more than you need, because somebody's got to pay up, and that somebody's you, right? How you're taxed is dependent on the structure of your business and the state that you're in. So I can't tell you the tax rate, or also how much you're awarded, right? So tax, the amount, the dollar amount of how much you're taxed will vary. I can't tell you what that's going to be, but you will be taxed. In most cases, there are very few exceptions. So just consider that as a potential downside, I guess, if you want to say that, but just consider that that is a possibility, and you need to know what that would look like for you going into it, because you need to deduct that from your cost, or you need to find a way to make up for that. Okay, point number 2 that I think is really important to know is that you may be asked what you did with the funds from the actual entity that gave you the funds, right? So there's a possibility of them reaching out and saying, hey, can we have your bank statements, right? That's a possibility. Can we have if you say you use it for employees, can we have your W-2s of the employees? Well, maybe not W-2s, but they might ask you for at least your 1040, not 1040. What is it? The form? I'm drawing a blank. 941. They might ask you for your 941s or other payroll reports, right? So just think about that because you don't want to take 20 grand, first of all, get taxed on it, second of all, and then 30, and then have to now, you go on vacation and ball out, because that's the thing, people really do that. That's another story for another day. But people really do this. And then when it comes time and the agency comes knocking, they're just like, yeah. So don't do that. There's a really good chance, especially for those growth capital corporations we mentioned in episode 26, that you'll be asked what you did with those funds. So look out for that. And if it's the government, don't play. All right. So payouts. So there's another big thing that people just really don't think about sometimes. Like, let's say you are awarded, payout might not be immediately. Like, you could wait 2 months to 3 months before you see those funds. You know you're awarded, you know the money's coming, but I would say, you know what you're going to do with it, but don't make a budget, don't make a plan, don't buy anything, don't do anything until you see those funds deposit into your account, because you are not guaranteed that the day you're told that you win, that you will get the funds. And don't hound those people for that money either. That's a whole nother thing, but don't do that because they're going to pay you out, but you just need to be patient and know that it's at the discretion of the company. And whenever they're ready to pay out, or whenever their comptroller or whoever does their finances pays out, they sometimes have schedules. So just know that that's a possibility. Okay, and I'm going to go over this one more time because nobody really asked, and I was so surprised because we talked about this a little bit and not enough for people have not to have asked. But business structure matters a lot, right? It really, I don't think any more emphasis can be placed on this. You have to have a proper business structure. These organizations, like these high-level organizations, are not funding people who are doing handshake deals, right? These are legitimate businesses that have invoices, that have contracts with other organizations or their customers. They have a proof of a system and logistics, like they are incorporated, right? So that's one thing. Do you have an EIN? Do you have articles of incorporation? Articles of incorporation are what you submit or you register, how you register with the state that you're working with. Do you have those documents? If you are supposed to be licensed, for example, let's say you're working in some kind of hardware industry, right? You are likely to have licenses. Like if you're a contractor, for example, do you have the appropriate licensing? That is necessary. They need to know that. Okay, this one is a really big one. Business bank account. Cash App is not going to work. Okay. You can get paid through Cash App, and making sure that those deposits are going into your business bank account. And then you can make sure that you are staying on top of your finances so that when it comes time for reconciliations and or bookkeeping, you're keeping a good record of what came in. Because one, for Uncle Sam purposes, because you have to file your taxes every year, but also you want to make sure that you're doing that because why am I drawing a blank? Okay, you also want to make sure that you're doing that because when it comes time to actually account for that money, or you need invoices or statements or whatever the case may be, Cash App is not going to be sufficient. Cash App doesn't capture all the information that you need. It doesn't give you enough information about your consumer. So you need to be able to have that in place. Have a business bank account. Okay, and if you don't have tax returns, like let's say you're a brand new business, or you don't have your profit and loss statement yet, that's fine. You should have a business plan, definitely. Or at least outlined a proposal where there's some kind of support for who you are and what you do. So a couple of things to think about and while you're going into this, because yes, there's free money out there, and there goes my computer. All right, yes, there's free money out there, and I would love for everyone to get funded, but there are rules to the game. You can't just go into this thinking, I'm just going to apply and somebody's going to drop money out the sky. It's free, but it's not what's the word I'm looking for? It's not unattached money. There are rules to this, right? There are requirements. So just think about that before you go and apply for these grants, please. All right. It is Monday. So this exact recording is going to be in the link on the mentalmoney.me Instagram page. I don't have a link yet in my bio on TikTok. So that's that. If you want to see the live recording of what we went through with on Hello Alice and the walkthrough that we did, if you want to see the walkthrough that we did on the grants.gov, then you'll be able to see that in the link under live trainings on the mentalmoney.me page on Instagram. So you have to go there to find the link. And I'll also leave a link in the show notes under. But if you have any other questions about grants or grants fundings, please feel free to email, ask your questions. So the grant does launch again. On Thursday. For those who are on the newsletter, they will get it first. For those who are not, you'll just have to wait and find out on social media like everybody else. That's the benefit to being on the newsletter. You get everything first. Grant opportunities, other opportunities that we're opening up for other businesses to get funded. We're doing micro grants, and in addition to the larger grant. So just think about that. And what else? Also, in addition to the grant, we're going to be launching a mini course, like literally a micro course on filling out a proposal. I'm going to give you the proposal template, and I'm going to give you the projections Excel sheet too. So you can do 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year projections, plug and play. You can add information. You can add information to your budget sheet. You'll be able to do that. And you'll also walk away with a list of grants as well. So, and that will be updated. I'm going to make sure that it's updated frequently so that you have that information. So again, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for always coming back. I really appreciate the support of the podcast. And I hope that we're providing the value that I hope we are. But otherwise, until next week, you know the deal. This month is the funding month. So we have 2 really great episodes coming up after this one that will help really round out the information that we shared. And again, just reach out if you need any help. Thank you so much for listening to the Mental Money Podcast. Please go ahead and remember to subscribe, but don't hoard all of this good information for yourself. Share this information with someone that you know could use it, especially if they need a shift in their mindset or someone who would love to have more money. So until we meet again, remember, like Uncle Snoop said, keep your mind on your money and your money on your mind.